Hi, I'm Matthew Street.
And I'm Steve Schnee, and welcome to QUARANTUNES. This is a show where we feature album recommendations for you to listen to during quarantine. In every episode, we each present 5 different titles and explain why we chose it for your listening pleasure. Every album is meant to offer some kind of comfort during these difficult days. In fact, we hope that they become personal favorites and you enjoy them long after this pandemic is over. We both encourage you to buy physical product, support the artist, support the labels, and support your favorite e-tailers and retailers when you can. Are you ready, Matt?
I'm ready, Steve.
Because here we go. Hey, everybody, welcome back to QUARANTUNES. My name is Stephen Schnee, and over here is Matthew Street, and he is going to start this episode off. Matthew, what is the first album you've got for this episode?
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Stephen Schnee channel. I'm happy to be a guest here. And my first selection is going to be an album that fairly new, came out in 2018. It's an album that has touched way deep down in my musical soul. I just love this album. And I don't know if I'm pointing right here, but my buddy right over here, he is the individual, the person, the musical genius who talked about this album first on his channel, was so passionate, was so emotional. I don't think I've ever seen him this, well, maybe, yachts might make him as passionate as this. This album right here, Wilkerson.
Absolutely stellar.
I still, to this day, almost 2 years on, listen to this album on a regular basis. I love it. I cherish it. I'm so happy the day I discovered it. I have gifted this album to numerous people. I have shared this album with numerous people. It's just something I totally, it's one of those albums that I never thought in the last couple of years an album like this would come out. And I know there's been a lot of other great releases. I could sit here all night and talk about great releases over the last couple of years, but this is the one that really has touched me. And to this day, the voice of Danny on this album, the playing on this album, the songwriting, the lyrics, you can't go wrong with this album, folks. And if you don't have it by now, you're crazy, because I know Steve has talked about it numerous times. I've done dedicated videos to this album and to Danny Wilkerson time and time again, and have stressed my love for this album. You want to feel good during the quarantine, the COVID-19 crisis, and you're feeling down in the dumps, and you can only have one album to bring you out of those down feelings, this is the one that will do it for you right here. And I'm just thankful to Steve for recommending it, and I'm grateful to have it. Wilkerson. And let's hope Danny comes out with more new music in the next year or two.
Normally, I could easily choose an album per se, but sometimes I like to pick compilations because I think that with the compilation, it'll have more of a mood that will enhance somebody's experience while they're going through quarantine. So I decided to pick The Association, the complete Warner Brothers and Valiant Records collection. This is a singles collection. It is a 2 CD set. Most of it is, at least I think the first CD and part of the second CD, I think, are all in mono. So the original mono mixes. So this has Never My Love, Along Comes Mary, Everything That Touches You, Windy, and plus it's got, A-sides, B-sides, and it's just chock full of great songs. And it actually goes up to the end of their Warner Brothers years. And that, the later stuff was, kind of more esoteric, but it still is wonderful, and the harmonies are there. And the Association are a band that belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they belong in your collection. If you own nothing by the Association, you really need to own the complete Warner Brothers and Valiant singles collection. And it's just a stellar 2 CD set. So what's your number 2 pick?
Well, I have to go with
there you go.
This is a special CD version of the Beatles' rock and roll music. Probably one of my favorite Beatles compilation disc of all time. There's
Mm-hmm.
been so many, the Red and the Blue albums, and there's been so many, the One album, and there's been so many.
Love
What
songs.
can you say? Beatles, love songs. But this one right here, I was 15 years old when it came out in 1976. The Beatles were back. It was the year of the Beatles again. Got to Get You Into My Life, #7 on the charts. This thing charted very high, and just wonderful rock and roll, driving rock and roll music. 75% of this album is their early rock and roll hits. That period
Mm-hmm.
from '62 until '66 or so,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
there's a few on the second disc that are after 1966. But it's just a rocker. It Man, if this doesn't get your blood pumping and just feeling like you want to jump up and down and dance, I don't know what will. It's just my pick for the Beatles. I listen to the Beatles all the time, and certainly during this crisis, I'm listening to them. So I can't recommend them as an artist enough to make you happy and make you
Mm-hmm.
smile. But for me, it's 24/7, 365 that I'm listening to the Beatles. And so I
Yeah.
chose this one. It's hard to get. I mean, you can get the vinyl, I'm sure. You can search for that. There's really not an official CD of this, but boy, if you can track it down, folks, get it or make your own because it's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's a wonderful disc.
Okay, here is my number two. I talked about this recently on one of my videos, and it's such a soothing, warm. I like to use soothing, warm, calming album because that's really what we need sometimes. We don't need to stress ourselves out. And there's Everything But the Girl, Baby the Stars Shine Bright. This is each of their albums up to this point. Like their first album was like a jazzy um, pop. Their second album was more of a kind of a rootsy rock with a little bit of Pretenders in there. This album here, they changed course. This is an album with strings and horns and timpani and all this kind of stuff. It sounds like it could have been a Backrack David and Dionne Warwick era album. Could have been a '60s Dusty Springfield album. It is so fantastic. It's all original songs. They're not doing covers, but every song sounds like a classic.
Right.
And it's the reason again that I chose it is it's like listening to a classic album. You feel comfortable with it, but it's a whole new collection of songs, and it offers you that excitement, the excitement of discovering something new while also feeling very comfortable with it. Now, this is available on vinyl. It is available on single disc. The one I have is the expanded edition that has a bonus disc with extra tracks. But any version of this that you buy will just warm your heart. It's an exceptional, soaring, grandiose slice of pop that I think everybody needs in their collection.
Okay, this is one that really, when it first came out, it hit me right away. He's an artist who's no longer with us and really was well known more for his hits in the late 50s and 60s. But it's the late, great Roy Orbison's Mystery
Mm-hmm.
Girl from 1989, I believe this came out. And Roy passed away late '88, so it was a posthumous release. But wow, happens to be the 2 CD deluxe edition of
Mm-hmm.
Mystery Girl, which came out a couple of years ago. It's an album that, from the moment I heard it, spoke to me in so many ways. The way Roy emotes in his voice. I mean, certainly we all know his great hits from the old days, and those
Mm-hmm.
are certainly wonderful. But here we are, so many years later, just before he passed away, and that voice just rang true. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't waver. It was strong as ever, as emotive as ever. The range was there. And what he sings about can speak to everyone that's watching this right now in your own personal life. He's just a voice for the ages. We'll never have another singer like Roy Orbison, I don't believe. There's people that have come close
Mm-hmm.
and resemble his voice, but he was a one of a kind. And this final album is such a testament and great addition to Roy's legacy. It's just a shame that he passed away so young. I believe he was only in his early 50s when he died, like
Yeah.
52. And you just wish that he could have still had several more years to be with us and share with us such beautiful music. But boy, I love all Roy's music. I have tons of his music, but this is probably my favorite recording of Roy because it came out at a time in my life where it really meant a lot and really, I don't know, it struck a chord with me that has never
Hmm.
left. And to this day, this album, when I put it on, I can bring up some emotions in me that will always be there. And music is emotional. We get emotional when we talk about it because it takes us back to a moment or time in our life that, whether good or bad, it takes us right to that moment. And
Hmm.
yeah, I can get emotional when I speak about music, and this is an album that, in the right setting, can get me going. So
Yeah,
I had to include this because during these times I've been listening to Roy a lot. His voice just is very soothing to me and comforting, and
mhm.
always will be. So that's my next pick.
Now here is my third title, and it is the LP collection by the Rubinoos. This
Oh, nice.
contains, this is a 3 CD set. The charm of the Rubinoos is the joyful melodies, the youthful excitement, and again, it's one of those things where their pop is so perfect. It feels familiar. It feels like you've worn that old sweater before, and you're putting it on again, but it's like made of new material and it's comfortable. And but this contains the first two Berserkly albums, which are classic. Those are these ones over here,
Right.
and then Basement Tapes, which is the first album with Al Chan, their bass player, who's still with the band. And each of them contain bonus tracks as well. And this is bubblegum, it's rock, it's power pop, uh, and it's just so heartfelt, so original. You know the Rubinoos the minute you hear them, and they're still around. They put out a great album. Was it 2018, I think?
Yeah. It might have been the early
No,
2019.
no, it was 2019 because
Yeah.
they tied with Lanny Flowers as my favorite album of that year.
Yes. Yeah.
And and the guys who appear on this album right here, all four of those guys are the same guys 40 years later. So
Yeah.
the band's been around for 50 years, and the Rubinoos LP collection, it's joyful and it will steer your mind away from the troubles that are going on in this world, and it'll take you to a land of rainbows and cotton candy. It's just so amazing. So
Oh,
anyway, that's it for my number three there.
my fourth pick is fourth. My fourth pick is Ray Conniff.
Ah, yeah, Ray.
All right. And this is called 16 Most Requested Songs. I could have picked so many Ray Conniffs. I've inherited or adopted my dad and mom's collection. So I
Mm-hmm.
have numerous Ray Conniff on vinyl. I have maybe 3 or 4 on CD, but I chose this one because this is his biggest songs right here. And I know there's some people out there watching this probably going to chuckle and go, "Oh, that's old people music," whatever you want to call it. But I'm telling you, and I have to admit, when I was a younger person, a teenager, and I was into the rock and roll life and all that stuff, I never would listen to Ray Conniff. But my parents, especially my dad, was playing this around the house so often, so
Mm-hmm.
many times that it was like absorbed into my being. It
Mm-hmm.
was there from when I was a little kid, and I didn't know it was there. But then it revealed itself. Like the movie Aliens. It just kind of popped out.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just, all of a sudden one day, I just had this epiphany that, you know, that's pretty good music. That makes me happy. That makes me feel comforting, and
Mm-hmm.
takes me back to a time in my life that was, innocent and fun. And yeah, and in days like these right now, you need a little Ray Conniff in your life, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
love I have to admit, I put this on every so often, and I throw on one of his albums and kick back and pop the old Coke Zero and and just relax and kick the feet back up and boy, you can forget all about what's going on in the world today, folks, in the news. Put on a little Ray Conniff and enjoy it. It's wonderful stuff, and I highly recommend something like this, folks. If you've never gotten into Ray Conniff, get his best of. Great stuff.
Okay, so is it my turn now to go to number four?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Uh,
sir.
Okay, this is actually a great little collection here. Any Trouble. This is the complete Stiff recordings collection on Cherry Red. If you haven't heard Any Trouble, this actually contains uh, the first album with bonus tracks, the second album with bonus tracks, and then a live release that was never like officially released, I think, or maybe it was, but I never found it originally on vinyl, back in the day. And it, of course, contains a booklet. Any Trouble, singer songwriter Clive Gregson. If you like the sound of, I always, he's the guy with the glasses. And I always hate comparing him to Elvis Costello, but everybody did. If you listen to this album, if you love the sound of Elvis Costello first album, and like if you want to hear what Elvis Costello might have sounded like between the first and second album, which was what My Aim Is True and This Year's Model, Any Trouble, very similar to that. Born of the pub rock scene, hooks galore. This guy's an amazing songwriter, and this album, Where Are All the Nice Girls, is easily found. You're going to be able to find this probably on vinyl, maybe even on individual CD or whatever. But Wheels in Motion, their second album, which is a little bit darker, contains bonus tracks. This is the only place you can legitimately get it on CD. And then, of course, the live thing as well. But it's so jam-packed with passion, power. And it's another one of those things where it sort of draws your attention away from what's going on. And you're just, entranced by the music because you're going like, well, this is folk, this is pub. But man, those guys are playing fast. It's not punk, but it's got the first album has a lot of that energy, and influenced by Richard Thompson and the folk scene, but it has that new wave energy, has power pop melodies. It's just not power pop, but power pop fans would totally dig it. This is available on Cherry Red, 3 CD set, and is just so full of life, and will definitely steer you away from the darkness.
All right, my number 5 is kind of off the track a little bit because it goes back to the 70s. It's a band that's very well known if you're into corporate rock, and I know we haven't really brought up corporate rock yet, but this album here, I have to mention it because whether it's kind of down times like we're going through now or good times, when I was a 14-year-old boy, I remember riding in the car with my parents heading out to Western Rhode Island to where a member of the family lived. And it was quite a long drive, like 35 minutes. And the lead single and song from this album came on and just knocked me out, changed me forever. I was never really into this kind of music until I heard this album.
There you go.
The first album by Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And the song was More Than a Feeling. And that voice of Brad Delp, that angelic voice, that
Mm-hmm.
beautiful guitar playing by Tom and the band, and the songwriting, the lyrics, it all came together in that one song, More Than a Feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the album itself doesn't disappoint and doesn't let up. This is one of those albums that I don't care how many times I've heard it, and I've heard it a lot, folks. I mean, I can't even count anymore. I could listen to this every day for the rest of my life and I won't get sick of it. It's one of those albums that it just sits with you, it stays with you, the emotion from it, it just, like I said, 14 years old, and here I am now, 58, going on 59, and I still
Happy
feel
early birthday.
feel everything that I felt when I was 14. I can put it on tomorrow and sit back in the chair and just drift off. And, one of the lines in More Than a Feeling, when I'm tired and feeling cold, I drown in my music, forget the day, dream of a girl I used to know, I close my eyes. The lyrics are just fabulous. Every song on this album is fabulous. And I would recommend to anyone, I know it's a common album. It's probably sold, a gazillion copies. One of the top selling debuts of all time. But I guarantee if you've never gotten into this before, folks, whether you're into power pop, metal, or whatever, this is an album for the ages. It's an album for all genres. It's an album for all people. and I highly recommend giving this a shot, giving it a listen. I can't believe how old it is now, 44 years old. My goodness, I don't know how you feel about this type of music. I'm not a big corporate music, kind of corporate rock guy, but this is one I do turn to a lot.
Well, you call it corporate rock. I call it stadium rock. I call it melodic rock, and I call it AOR.
Right.
Huge, huge into AOR. So of course, I'm right there with Boston. I have most of the Journey albums and REO Speedwagon and Foreigner
Yeah.
and lots of bands like that. Because sure, it's cliche ridden, but isn't everything we listen to cliche ridden? But I'm going to go completely off the map for this next one, probably closer to what you were just talking about. Um, Now, I'm not a huge prog rock fan. I love some bands and I love certain songs by bands. And this band, okay, if you're a fan of Gabriel era Genesis or Peter Gabriel era Genesis, produced like Phil Collins Genesis, then if that's confusing, I mean, forget it. But Marillion, Misplaced Childhood. This album came out in 1985. Okay, this is a concept album, as a lot of prog albums are. If you want something to distract you from what's going on and you want to go into this little magical world filled with all these wonderful melodies and time changes, great vocals and great songwriting, and just wonderful clean production, Marillion Misplaced Childhood is an amazing record. This is the album that got me into Marillion, and this is with Fish on vocals. They've had two vocalists throughout the years, same instrumentalists, but Fish, the vocalist, not the jam band. But this is the deluxe edition that contains bonus tracks, B-sides, demos, single edits. In fact, the song Kaylee, which was a huge hit in England, sounds like it could have been a Phil Collins hit, although their sound is more rooted in the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis. But it's got that tight, wonderful production that Phil Collins records had. So the band is like old Genesis produced like the new Genesis, and it's just absolutely amazing. And you look like you're going, "What are you talking about?" Well, that's it for this episode of QUARANTUNES. We hope you enjoyed the selections we chose for you today. If at all possible, please buy physical product. Support the artists, support the labels, and support the e-tailers and retailers. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel and Matthew Street's YouTube channel. We thank you for watching. Any final words, Matthew?
Well, Steve, I just want to say this was a lot of fun. I truly enjoyed it. One of the best times I've had going through music, and certainly music is helping us all through these times. It certainly is helping me, and I know you as well. So thank you for doing this.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Matthew, for being involved. And we'll see you next time on QUARANTUNES.